Part 28. She Always Loves to Sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 272. Chapter 272 You Are Too Obsessed, First Update. After Chi Jinkai left, Li Ju breathed a sigh of relief, turned on the computer, archived the completed test paper and sent it to Mr. Wu. Thanks a lot. Li Ju raised his eyebrows as he looked at the message from Mr. Wu on his phone. It's not hard, I hope you won't regret it. The Emperor's small cubs did not know how psychological quality was. After waiting for a while, Mr. Wu did not send a message. He must have been choked by her words. Li Ju didn't care. Since the test papers were finished, she had nothing to do. It happened to be raining heavily outside, so she took advantage of the sound of rain to take a nap. As soon as I lay down, I received unexpected news. What did you say? The guy who stole the strange stone is in the imperial capital. Li Ju's eyes flashed, secretly realizing that the matter might not be that simple. Fourth, where did the news come from? Given by the council. Li Ju frowned. Is it reliable? I've asked the teacher. It's reliable, but I don't rule out other possibilities. For example, the council is tampering with it. Li Ju thought for a moment and realized that it was unlikely that the board of directors would do anything. After all, they still had the same goal in terms of finding the mole. Wasn't the council still unable to do anything about the theft of the strange stone before? How did it know who did it so quickly? I heard that Director Han made a fishing trip, and the man showed his flaws. I originally wanted to capture him in one fell swoop, but ended up letting him run away. Have you ever asked that guy why he's here? The person on the other side was silent for a moment and said, I don't know much about it. I just heard from the people in the council that they spent a lot of effort to track down the person. But since no one in the council is in the empire, we asked for our help. Li Ju pondered for a moment, nodded and said, I understand. You can take the people below to check. Good. The other party answered and hung up the phone. Li Ju lay back on the bed, but she was not sleepy at all. Assuming that the council's information is correct and the mole really came to the imperial capital, we have to speculate on his intentions. If the theft of exotic stones is exposed, according to the association's regulations, that person will definitely not end well. Since you are escaping, you must find a place to hide for a while where the association's forces cannot find you. But he did the opposite and secretly risked his life to come to the imperial capital. If he wanted to hide in the imperial capital, it was simply impossible. The association had a lot of power in the imperial capital. If he had any brains, he would not have committed suicide by himself. Then there is only one possibility, that is, there is some reason why he has to risk his life to come here. Thinking of this, Li Ju decided to go and see for himself. According to the information she received last time, the theft of strange stones is most likely related to Lin Yan, but this time the insider of the association suddenly came to the imperial capital, and so far no connection between the two has been found. So is her intelligence wrong, or is it that maybe Lin Yan is in the imperial capital at the moment? There may be other possibilities, but Li Ju's intuition told her that the two people must be related, and she had to confirm it herself. According to the council's information, the man bought a plane ticket from abroad to the imperial capital 2 days ago and has since lost track of him. Even if his mobile phone was located, it was only known that he had appeared in an abandoned factory in the suburbs. Because the council could not directly access the surveillance of imperial capital and the personnel registration information of hotels or guest houses, they temporarily lost real-time monitoring of insiders and had to transfer the matter to the association's responsible unit in imperial capital, which is the Special Administration Bureau. To handle. The Special Administration Bureau is a subordinate organization of the association. Due to the variety and complexity of superpowers in various countries around the world, the association alone cannot properly handle incidents related to superpowers in various countries. Therefore, the Special Administration Bureau was established to maintain the relationship between superpowers and associations in various countries. The relationship between. However, the Council wants to hand this matter over to the Special Administration Bureau, and the procedures to be followed are very complicated. I am afraid that by the time the Special Administration Bureau gets the special order to track down the mole, the person will have already run away. That's why she asked Lao Si to take people to investigate first, because they were not under the jurisdiction of the Special Administration Bureau and it was more convenient and simpler to do things. It was already noon when Li Ju arrived in the suburbs. However, the rain did not slow down. On the contrary, it had a tendency to get stronger and stronger. The rolling and thick dark clouds seemed to be pressing on the top of the person's head, making it breathless. The huge raindrops came all over the sky and kept hitting the car windows. Li Ju opened the car door, and as soon as her feet touched the ground, sudden raindrops kept hitting her, soaking her black clothes. In just a moment, all the rainwater on her body evaporated, and no raindrops touched her body. An isolation shield seemed to be formed around her, blocking out all the raindrops. At this time, Li Ju's whole temperament was very different from usual. His face was half covered by a silver-white mask, his eyes were deep, his eyebrows were cold, and his jawline was slightly tight, exuding a domineering and cold toughness. Black Martin boots stepped steadily on the water-filled road, making a crisp sound, and slowly entered the factory step by step. The factory was dimly lit and empty, with only the sound of raindrops constantly hitting the old railings and iron barrels echoing in this huge, empty space, which was eerie. The musty smell emanating from the surroundings mixed with the smell of earth, making her frown. Li Ju walked back and forth, looking around and found that there was no sign that anyone had been here. However, since the last location tracked by the council was here, the mole must not have appeared here for no reason. There must be other places that she did not notice. So what exactly made him come to this abandoned factory? Li Ju crossed his arms and stood there with his eyes lowered in thought. The sound of rain outside is getting louder and louder, and the raindrops fall on the ground and splash white mist, giving people the illusion of being in a fairyland. The inside of the factory became even more eerie, with the sound of rain pouring and the whistling wind making strange sounds in the empty environment. Suddenly, Li Ju's ears moved and he accurately captured the sound of subtle footsteps. At the same time, a slender white hand stretched out from behind her, trying to clasp her shoulder. Li Ju's eyes sharpened, he quickly turned around and caught the person's wrist with a grapple, then pulled it upwards. Ouch, pain, pain, boss, let go. A cry of pain brought Li Ju back to her thoughts. She relaxed her grip and the man broke free. Like Li Ju, he was dressed in black, with a silver mask half covering his face. Behind him, there were also a group of similarly dressed people. Li Ju turned cold and said in a deep voice, "Who told you to sneak around behind me?" The man paused and asked, "Why am I so sneaky?" "It's because you are too absorbed in thinking about things." As soon as he received the order, he summoned people to come to the abandoned factory according to the information given by the council. As soon as he arrived, he saw Li Ju standing there alone with his head lowered and not knowing what he was thinking. "I originally wanted to call her, but I was overpowered immediately." End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 273. Chapter 273. Why did Chi Jinkai appear here? Second update. "Didn't you ask me to bring someone to investigate? Why are you here too?" he asked doubtfully. The people behind him also had different expressions. Fortunately, they were covered by masks, otherwise Li Ju would have seen their expressions freeze the moment they saw her. "I go. Why did this great come? Didn't you say it was just a small task?" Li Ju explained his guest to him. He nodded, his eyes full of agreement. "I think the same as you, but I always feel that something is wrong." Let's test it first, Li Ju said. He nodded, waved to the group of people behind him, and said, "What are you doing standing still? Let's get to work." Everyone took action immediately, opened all the boxes they were carrying, took out the precision instruments inside, and spread their hands around the factory to inspect them carefully, staring closely at the instrument dials. After a while, everyone reported the results to him. No, he widened his eyes, as if he couldn't believe it. Yes, every corner has been tested, and none of the detectors responded. The person who reported it confirmed it again. How is this possible? If the mole really did something here, why didn't the detector respond? His eyes were a little dazed, and he subconsciously looked at Li Ju. He found that her face was thoughtful, and he couldn't help asking, "What's wrong?" Li Ju narrowed his eyes, glanced at the detectors in everyone's hands, and said, "Maybe you thought wrong." "What?" "The detector can only detect the residual mental power after using supernatural powers, so what if he didn't use his mental power?" He shook his head and denied, "It's impossible. The detectors we use are all modified by Lao Wu. Anyone with superpowers can detect fluctuations in mental power. If he really appears here, then what's left of him, the mental strength that comes down, is impossible to measure. The biggest difference between superpowers and ordinary people is the frequency of mental power fluctuations. The mental power fluctuations of each superpower will be slightly different, just like the fingerprints and DNA of ordinary people, and this is what they usually confirm when they have superpowers. The method of capable person identification. The inner ghost has been here for a while. For people with superpowers, they usually inadvertently leak out extremely subtle mental power when they breathe in and out. If he really comes here, the detector will not react. But there is another situation, Li Ju said suddenly. She watched his expression suddenly change when he said these words, and asked in shock, "You mean?" Li Ju nodded. Even though every superpower user will inadvertently leak their mental power, there is still a situation. That means that the person's superpower level is high enough that he can control his mental power at will without leaking it. Li Ju can do this, or every superpower user above SS level can do it. But the mole came from the council. All members of the council combined do not have an SS level superpower, so where did he come from? Li Ju and he both saw solemnity in each other's eyes. In addition to the supervision team affiliated with the president and the guard team used to protect the safety of association members, there are actually people who have reached the SS level in the association? This is impossible, let alone SS level. Even if it is just an A-level superpower, it will be recorded in the association, but I have never heard of that person before this incident. Li Ju's face darkened and his eyes darkened slightly. "I'm afraid things won't be that simple this time. If all the above guesses are true, then she has a hunch that there will be more things involved behind the theft of the exotic stone. A person who has never been noticed by the association. Since he is an SS level master, and Yizo has not been noticed by anyone for so many years, it is impossible to say that there is no one behind him. So what does that person want to do?" Li Ju squinted his eyes, thoughts swirling in his mind. "Okay, don't think about it too much. The council has handed this matter over to the Special Administration Bureau. Their people should be here soon, let them worry about it," he chuckled, not looking like Li Ju was so dignified. Li Ju glanced at him coldly. "Investigating the theft of exotic stones is a task given to me by the president. The implication is that she has to worry. Even if she didn't want to care about it at all, but the task was coming, she couldn't do nothing. I know, but this is just a task for you, and a great opportunity for the council to clear its suspicions. Why don't you just go with the flow and reap the benefits?" "Do you think I will believe a word of what the council says?" Li Ju sneered. "That's really not the case." Seeing that he was speechless, Li Ju said, "I always feel that this matter will be related to what I want to check." "Evidence?" "No evidence, intuition." The man was silent, not knowing what to say, so he had to ask, what should we do now? Now that the Special Administration Bureau has taken over, let's investigate privately. After all, the Empire's Special Administration Bureau is not under the control of their second supervision team. If they conduct a large-scale investigation and robbery on other people's territory, I am afraid they will be included in the book. Okay, he nodded in agreement, knowing that he would be busy next. There are no other clues in this factory. Let's go back first, Li Ju said. He nodded and asked the others to clean up the traces of their visit, and then said to Li Ju, "Boss, let's go together. I still have something to do, please take care of it and leave immediately." Li Ju turned around and left regardless of how resentful the eyes behind him were. Getting into the car, he put his hands on the steering wheel and stared at the swaying wipers in front of the window, slightly dazed. She carefully combed through the information she knew in her mind. 1. This mole is an SS-level superpower who has been hiding in the council, and his ability cannot be ignored. 2. He has been here and done something they don't know about. 3. There was someone behind him, and that person instigated him to steal the strange stone, which led to the strange stone arriving in the imperial capital by accident. 4. He may be related to Lin Yan. That's all she knows so far. She doesn't know much more, and based on this alone, she can understand very little. Li Ju stretched out her hand and pinched the center of her brow, feeling that this year's troubles were coming one after another, making it difficult for people to stop. But no matter what, she intuitively felt that if she continued to investigate, she might get unexpected gains, so she stopped worrying about it and just checked first. Li Ju started the car and drove away from the factory, passing another car at a corner. Her body froze suddenly, and she immediately looked in the rearview mirror, but she could only see the rear of the black Bentley. Did she see it wrong just now? Li Ju narrowed her clear eyes, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes, and felt that it was impossible. I must have seen it wrong. How could Qi Jinkai appear in this wilderness? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 274. Chapter 274 Your Uncle's Birthday, First Update. On the way back, Li Ju received a call from Mr. Li. Hello, Grandpa. You still know that there is a grandpa like me. Mr. Li seemed to be holding back his anger, which made her helpless. What's wrong? What are you talking about? You really can't help but forget me as a grandfather now that you have a fiancé, right? Mr. Li snorted coldly, widened his eyes slightly, and cursed angrily. Didn't you pack me up and give it to Qi Jinkai before? Li Ju complained in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud, so he could only follow him. Yes, Grandpa, I was wrong. You knew you were wrong and you didn't say anything, Mr. Li asked. Li Ju heard a different meaning from his tone. What does it mean? Mr. Li paused for a moment, and then said carefully, tomorrow is your uncle's birthday. Come back with a small message. He originally wanted to hold a birthday party for Li Chen's birthday. After all, he had not celebrated his birthday at home for many years, but he didn't want to. He said he just wanted to have a meal together as a family. Speaking of which, Li Chen has been away from home for many years, and what he may want most is just to be reunited with his family. Li Ju couldn't help being stunned, and his expression was dull for a moment. Tomorrow. Xiaju, did you hear what I said? Mr. Li's voice brought her thoughts back, and it took her a while to find her own voice and said, I know. Perhaps hearing the subtle change in her tone of voice, Mr. Li sighed and said, don't worry, your father and the others won't be here tomorrow. Li Ju then realized that the old man meant that she didn't have to worry about bumping into people she didn't want to see. A warm current surged through her heart and she laughed softly, I understand, Grandpa. Then it settled. Li Ju turned off the Bluetooth. Mr. Li's phone call just now reminded her of something, which confused her and made him think that she was unhappy because of Li Hong. Actually not. Li Ju lowered his eyes and hid his expression, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. The rain has gradually stopped at this time, and the moist air is mixed with the breath after the rain. She did not go back to Jingyuan. Instead, she parked her car at a nearby convenience store, bought a box of beer, and went to the beach. It had just rained, and the sea air was extremely humid. The smell was all fishy and salty, but Li Ju didn't dislike it. He took out a can of beer, clasped it lightly with his fingers, and pulled up the ring with a sneer. She was leaning lazily on the side of the car. The mask on her face had already been taken off and thrown on the passenger side. It was early after the rain, and the afterglow of the sun fell through the clouds on her soft hair, giving off a fine golden glow. The side face is exquisite and beautiful, as if coated with a layer of soft light. Li Ju looked at the vast sea in the distance, drank the beer in his hand bit by bit, flattened the can after drinking it, and threw it aside, ignoring it at all. She has always felt like a wild child without a father or a mother. Her father is unknown and her mother is missing. She has never had a home and does not understand the warmth of home. In the past 2 years since she came to the imperial capital, although the Li family has had some unpleasant things that a wealthy family would have, in general, it really made her feel like home. However, after all, borrowed things are not your own and must be returned in the end. Whether it is the daughter of the Li family or Qi Jinkai's fiancé, once she has finished her work, she will leave the imperial capital and return to her world, returning everything here to its original owner. Li Ju's fingers holding the beer can were slightly firm, and a glimmer flashed in his eyes. Leaving the imperial capital? This was her original plan, but for some reason, now that she thinks about it, she feels a little greedy. If she left without saying a word, Qi Jinkai would be angry, right? Suddenly, Li Ju was stunned. Why would she wonder if Qi Jinkai was angry? Are they familiar enough? Li Ju couldn't help but chuckle, feeling funny about her own thoughts. Speaking of which, Qi Jinkai has been really good to her during this period. If she wants to leave then, she should say hello to him first, so that he won't say that she is unloyal, right? After staying at the beach for a few hours, she drank a whole box of beer. Although Li Ju's drinking capacity was not bad and the beer would not make her drunk, there was still a bit of scarlet color on her cheeks, which made her originally the eye-catching appearance is even more stunning and attractive. The result of drinking so much was that she was detained for drunk driving. When Qi Jinkai received a call from the police station asking him to pick up someone, he was stunned. After confirming that it was Li Ju, his face turned dark to the naked eye, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I'll go right away." Police. For some reason, even through the phone, he could feel the coolness in his words. Qi Jinkai stood up, picked up the coat on the side, handed everything in his hands to the think tank, and hurried to the police station. When he got there, he found that Li Ju was not as drunk as he thought, his mind was still sober, and he was sitting on the bench of the police station with a casual attitude, waiting for him. Qi Jinkai's face darkened and he walked over with long legs. Feeling a large shadow cast above her head, Li Ju immediately raised her head. Because she drank too much, her eyes were watery, her eyes were slightly unfocused, and her face was blushing. She sat on the bench and raised her head. Looking at him seductively, he looked a bit well-behaved. Qi Jinkai was stunned, feeling as if a feather was gently scratching his heart, itching, but on the surface he coughed lightly, and asked, "Why are you drinking and driving?" Li Ju said nothing, lowered his eyes, his long eyelashes trembling slightly, and his originally clear voice was a little deep, and said, "I'm in a bad mood." End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 275. Chapter 275 A Lifetime of Pain, Second Update. Once he heard that she was in a bad mood, Chi Jinkai immediately lowered his voice and said softly, "What's wrong? Didn't he feel fine when he left today? Why are you driving after drinking so much?" Li Ju shook her head gently. Although she was a little dizzy now, she was still conscious and didn't want to talk to him so much. Chi Jinkai sighed lightly. She didn't want to say it and he couldn't force her to say it. He could only let her sit here for a while he went to handle the formalities for her. Li Ju's face was always eye-catching, and after she became Chi Jinkai's fiancée, no one in the imperial capital didn't recognize her. The traffic policeman who stopped her was so scared that his legs were weak when he saw her face clearly. Li Ju was racing at high speed in the city just now. Drunk driving. Considering her identity, the traffic policeman who handled her immediately sent her to the police station. The people at the police station were also able to find her out. After blocking the information, they immediately found Chi Jinkai. After learning that Li Ju was driving drunk and speeding at high speeds, Chi Jinkai's face was so gloomy that he could drip water. The knuckles of the fingers holding the penalty slip turned slightly white, and the chill emanating from his whole body made the little policeman opposite him feel weak in his legs. Taking a deep breath, Chi Jinkai suppressed the anger in his heart, signed the penalty form, paid the fine, and led Li Ju away. Behind them, the policeman holding the penalty ticket breathed a sigh of relief as if he had survived the robbery, hoping to never meet Chi Jinkai again in his life. It's so scary. The rumors are indeed true. After leaving the police station, Li Ju walked in front and Chi Jinkai was left behind. However, she didn't care at all and kept her head down without knowing what she was thinking. Chi Jinkai crossed his long legs and stood in front of her. "What's wrong with you?" Seeing that she was about to hit him, Li Ju suddenly came back to her senses. She was shocked to realize that she was slightly closer to him at this moment, and even their breathing could be heard clearly. She subconsciously took a step back and said, "It's nothing." Chi Jinkai looked at her suspiciously, and finally said nothing, dragging her into the car and taking her back to Jingyuan. "Your car has been pulled away by the traffic police brigade. Do you want me to find a solution?" Li Ju put on his seat belt. Hearing this, he paused with his hands, an unnatural look flashed across his face, and said, "No, just let nature take its course." This time it was indeed her own suicide. After drinking, she couldn't help but drove her car in the city. As a result, the car was lost and all the points on her driver's license were deducted. Seeing her eyes twinkling and her expression stiff, Chi Jinkai sighed, "Why are you so crazy? You dare to drive a car after drinking so much?" Li Ju defended in a low voice, "I just drank some beer." "Are you sure it's just a little?" "All right." The box of beer she bought contained at least dozens of cans. Li Ju remained silent. Chi Jinkai glanced at her face secretly and found something was wrong, so he asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" He was fine when he left, but who knew that after he left, she drank for no reason? Li Ju didn't want to tell him too much about herself, so she excused herself, "I'm just in a bad mood and want to drink some wine to relieve my boredom." Seeing that she still refused to say anything, Chi Jinkai sighed softly and said, "Don't do this again. The traffic police stopped you this time. What if you get into a car accident?" "Li Ju, don't worry. She would never do such a stupid thing again." After chatting with him for a few words, Li Ju had sobered up a lot. A scene from today suddenly popped up in his mind. He couldn't help but glance sideways at Chi Jinkai. He hesitated for a few seconds and asked, Have you been at the company today?" Chi Jinkai paused for a moment and then returned to normal. Of course he did not stay at the company today. During this period, he went to a factory in the suburbs to investigate some things. But why did she ask that? Chi Jinkai glanced at Li Ju strangely and said, "Yes, I have been in the company." Li Ju sighed and said nothing. Maybe she really saw it wrong. At that time, the person's appearance also flashed away, so fast that she couldn't see clearly at all. Thinking about it now, it was just her illusion. With the doubts in his heart dispelled, Li Ju stopped probing and changed the subject directly. Grandpa just called and said that tomorrow is my uncle's birthday and asked me to take you back with him. Chi Jinkai's eyes flashed lightly and he said calmly, okay. But I was a little surprised, thinking I would have to meet my parents so soon. Although I have never met the Li family before, the current situation is different from the past, so how can my mood be the same? Moreover, this was the first official visit since he and Li Ju got engaged. He couldn't lose etiquette anyway, and he had to prepare something. But he has to go tomorrow, time is too short, and he doesn't know the Li family's hobbies, so it's not easy to prepare this gift. Chi Jinkai thought about it and thought it would be better to ask Li Ju first to avoid embarrassment later. Unexpectedly, as soon as he turned his head, he saw that Li Ju had fallen asleep with her head tilted and pillowed on her arms. All she could hear in the car was her shallow breathing. Chi Jinkai. Chi Jinkai sighed, forget it, judging from her appearance, she might not know much about the Li family's Zihai, so he might as well figure it out on his own. Thinking of this, Chi Jinkai took out his mobile phone and sent a message to Jing Yi, asking him to prepare some gifts for the first visit. Time was tight and they must be prepared early tomorrow morning. Jing Yi. Who are you going to visit? Who deserves such a solemn visit? Li family. Mr. Li was caught off guard and sneezed. Li Chen, who was on the opposite side of the chessboard, immediately handed over a tissue when he saw this. Dad, it's been cold lately, so be careful. Mr. Li snorted twice and said, don't interrupt, just make a move quickly. Li Chen had no choice but to pick up a chess piece with and put it on the chessboard. Ah Shen, I told Xiaju that she should come with Xiao Ci tomorrow. Li Chen paused for a moment, then smiled, okay, it's rare for the family to get together. However, seeing him like this, Mr. Li sneered, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. When they come tomorrow, you are not allowed to make excuses. After being exposed, Li Chen laughed awkwardly, Dad, I'm also worried about Xiaju. I think you just don't like small words. Mr. Li suddenly had such an expression on his face. Doesn't he still know his son? That's true of you, Xiaju is not your daughter, why are you so hostile to Xiaosai? Mr. Li said. Li was silent for a moment, lowered his eyes, looked a little sad, and said with difficulty, if she were still alive, she would be as old as Xiaju. Mr. Li froze. Of course he knew who Li Chen was talking about. He sighed heavily and put the flag back, not intending to continue. It's been so long, it's time for you to let it go. After saying that, Li Chen smiled mockingly to himself. Lay down? How to let him let go? His wife and daughter died in front of him. This piercing pain has been engraved in his bones and will never go away in his lifetime. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 276. Chapter 276, My hands slip every time. First update. Li Chen tilted his head to prevent others from noticing the sadness in his eyes. He lowered his voice and his throat was a little tight, if I could forget, I would have forgotten it long ago. His words pierced Mr. Li's heart, and the atmosphere fell into a brief silence. After a long time, Mr. Li sighed softly, yes, if you forget, why bother always treating Ahan's birthday as your own birthday? Li Chen lowered his eyes and said nothing. But Ah Shen, don't blame me for talking about you. We have been gone for so many years, and you should recognize the reality. You refused to accept Ahan when he died, but the body is right in front of you, you have to believe it even if you don't believe it. Listen to me and stop thinking about what happened back then. Li Chen's eyes quickly flashed with dark light, and he said solemnly, I don't believe that is Ahan. Although the body looked exactly like Ayan, and the DNA confirmed that it was hers, there was still a trace of disbelief in his heart. It's not that he refuses to accept reality, but that he has too many doubts. He has been searching for these years, but still found nothing. Seeing his stubbornness, Mr. Lee couldn't bear to talk any more. He knew how much his eldest son loved Wen back then. After her death, he was like a demon. He couldn't listen to what others said. He didn't even care about Li Tingzi and Lim Wei. The whole person was going crazy for a long time before he calmed down. Forget it, I won't force you, just think about it yourself. Mr. Li got up and went back to his room, leaving Li Chen alone in the study, staring at the chess game for a long time, unable to recover. Jing Yi's work efficiency is still very reliable, and he handed the purchased gifts to Qi Jingkai early the next morning. Li Ju looked on with surprise on his face. Why, are you preparing so many things? Qi Jingkai directed Jing Yi to put the things in the trunk, turned around and said to her, it's not a good idea to come to the door empty-handed. He has not gone to the Li family many times, and this time there are more Li family members, so he is more prepared and prepared. Li Ju smiled, it's just a celebration of my uncle's birthday. There are no outsiders around. Are you okay with that? Qi Jingkai's eyes flashed and he clearly and accurately caught the key words. You just said that there are no outsiders here. Doesn't it mean that he and she are both members of the same family? Li Ju's mouth froze, and he suddenly realized that he seemed to have said the wrong thing. His eyes flashed a few times, and he calmly denied, you heard wrong. Her tone was a little guilty, with a feeling of concealment. Qi Jingkai raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a faint smile on his lips. Feeling uncomfortable when he saw her, Li Ju glanced at him and got into the car directly. Qi Jingkai followed closely and sat next to her. The distance was very close. His whole body was wrapped in his breath, and his breathing was confused for a moment. Li Ju calmly moved to the side. Unexpectedly, he also moved a few times, forcing her to the car door. Next to the car door, with him sitting next to him, there was no room to move at all. Li Ju took a deep breath, clenched her hands, and finally couldn't help but raise her head. What are you doing? Qi Jingkai raised the corners of his mouth slightly, with a slight smile in his eyes, and continued to pursue the topic. Just now, are you sure I heard it wrong just now? He drew out his tone, raised his eyebrows, and had a playful expression on his face. Obviously he was making fun of her. Li Ju narrowed her eyes, a hint of danger flashed in her eyes. Dare you tease her? So, she smiled slightly, but the smile did not reach her eyes, and said, what if? But I clearly heard. That's because you have bad ears. Before Qi Jingkai could say the second half of his sentence, Li Ju choked him. Qi Jingkai was stunned for a moment, and then helplessness appeared in his eyes. Well, it's not good if your ears are not good. If you keep asking, you might get angry. Seeing that he finally stopped, Li Ju was about to tell him to stay away from her. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the car body suddenly slipped. Li Ju, who was sitting next to the car door, became unsteady and fell directly into Qi Jingkai's arms. Inside. Qi Jingkai was also startled, and subconsciously stabilized her body to prevent her from being knocked. Despite this, Li Ju's head still hit the crook of his neck. The soft and fragrant hair passed across his chin, causing a tingling sensation, and the place where it was touched heated up as if it was on fire. Qi Jingkai quickly lowered his head, and met a pair of eyes. Moving his gaze downwards, his hands happened to be around her waist. It looked like he was hugging her from behind, and she was lying on her back. In the arms, the posture is very ambiguous. Our eyes met, and the air was briefly quiet. Qi Jingkai. Li Ju. This silence was not broken until Jing Yi's questioning voice came from the front. Sir, my hand slipped just now, are you okay? Li Ju. Why do your hands slip every time you drive? Li Ju's face became gloomy for a moment, and he quickly left Qi Jinkai's embrace. Qi Jinkai coughed lightly, with a bit of reluctance hidden in his eyes. The warm and soft touch just now, to be honest, it feels quite comfortable to hold it. This hand slips just right. Jingyi naturally had no idea what the two of them were thinking. When Qi Jinkai didn't answer, he was confused for a moment, and then continued to concentrate on driving. The embarrassment just now lasted until we got off the car. Zhou's mother stood in front of the two of them, looking at her and Qi Jinkai with a smile, and said, "My uncle is coming as soon as he comes. What else do you bring with you? It's too unprofessional." Hearing the word guy, Li Ju and Qi Jinkai paused in unison. Li Ju was speechless. It was too early to change the title of Zhou Ma. Wrong. Why the change is too early, as if this title will be realized one day in the future. Li Ju sighed twice in her heart. Hearing Zhou Ma's name, Qi Jinkai glanced at Li Ju subconsciously, and then said, "That's right." Zhou's mother smiled so much that the corners of her mouth almost reached behind her ears. It is said that Qi Jinkai is cold and aloof, usually aloof and aloof, as if he should not approach strangers. Even if he is engaged, it will definitely not last long. But after getting in touch with her, I realized that those rumors were all nonsense. Her young lady and Qi Seinyi were obviously very good friends, and Qi Seinyi seemed to be very easy to get along with. Introduced the two people into the living room. As soon as he entered the door, Li Ju realized that everyone except them had already arrived. And there is one more person. Li Ju took some time to look at Ji Yunchu, who was sitting next to Li Tingzi and joking with Mr. Li, and raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why is DRG here?" Ji Yunchu raised his head after hearing this, and met her teasing gaze. Mr. Li looked up and saw Li Ju, his face suddenly burst into laughter. "Xiao Ju and Xiao Ci are here, come and sit down." He called Li Ju and Qi Jinkai over, and after they sat down, he said, "I asked Tingzi to invite DRG here, so I can thank her for taking care of my health recently." Li Ju's eyes were filled with interest. "That's true, but today is a family dinner, so inviting Ji Yunchu over, the meaning is already obvious, right?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 277. Chapter 277 Lim Wei, I haven't seen my dad for a long time and I'm at a disadvantage. Second update. But what surprised her was that Ji Yunchu actually came. Li Ju had a smile in her eyes. Tut, 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 it seems that good things will happen to the Li family soon. Ji Yunchu was so stared at by Li Ju that he had goosebumps all over his body, and he looked at her with a strange look. What other strange things is she thinking about? Li Ju was making eye contact with Ji Yunchu, while Qi Jinkai was locked in the eyes of Li Chen and his son, as if their gazes had solidified. However, Qi Jinkai is someone who has experienced big events, so this look has no impact on him at all, and his whole person is very calm and relaxed. Lim Wei leaned lazily on the sofa, holding a handful of melon seeds in his hand and squinting his eyes as he chewed them. He felt very unhappy because he couldn't stand Qi Jinkai's behavior. Spitting out the melon seed rinds in his mouth, he hummed softly and said, "Master Qi is such a rare visitor. Why are you free to come to our house today?" The tone of voice was sinister, as if he was deliberately making things difficult for Qi Jinkai. In fact, this is true. Li Chen called him to the room last night and told him to give Qi Jinkai a good test today to see if he was worthy of Xiaoju's trust for the rest of his life. Of course he is very happy to do this kind of thing. You must know that in the imperial capital circle, although Qi Jinkai is similar in age to them, his seniority is far superior to them, and he always acts like an elder. Every time I meet him, I always look down and be respectful. It's not easy to take advantage of him this time. It's a rare opportunity. However, less than a second after he finished speaking, Mr. Li directly hit his calf with a cane. Speak to me. I invited Xiao Ci, do you have any opinions? Lim Wei let out a cry of pain, and all the melon seeds in his hand fell to the ground. He covered his calves with his hands and looked at Mr. Li sadly. You are really my grandfather, you are willing to kill me. It hurts him so much. It was originally agreed that he would take the lead in testing Qi Jinkai and stumbling him, but as a result of Mr. Li's knock, his momentum immediately disappeared. Died before leaving the army, he had no choice but to pin his hopes on Li Tingzi and Li Chen. Li Chen received his look and said immediately, useless things. Although he scolded Lim Wei severely in his heart, his expression remained as gentle as ever. It's a great honor for me that third master can come here, don't take it to heart because the dog is acting nonsense. The third master distanced himself from Qi Jinkai and put him in the position of an outsider both inside and outside his words. Apparently he did not acknowledge his identity. Qi Jinkai raised his eyebrows. He had long heard that the uncle of the Li family was a secretive master. When he saw him today, he saw that this hidden thorn in his heart could kill without blood. He chuckled lightly and waved his hand behind him. Jing Ai immediately understood and placed the gift he bought on the table. No, today is my uncle's birthday. Here is a gift prepared by Xiaju and I hope you won't mind it. Early before entering the house, he asked Jing Ai to put together the birthday gifts he and Li Ju had prepared. Now he wanted to tell Li Chen that he and Li Ju were one and the gifts could be given together. As he spoke, he slightly raised his eyebrows at Li Chen. Li Chen's gentle expression was almost unbearable. What the hell? Why didn't he realize that Qi Jinkai was so shameless before? The fingers holding the teacup were slightly firm, as if to treat it as Qi Jinkai. Li Chen took a deep breath and smiled, of course I don't mind the gift Xiaju prepared. The first 7 words were emphasized by him, as if for special emphasis. In any case, his attitude is very clear. He doesn't like Qi Jinkai at all. If he thinks about it, he will have to spend some time. The secret confrontation between Li Chen and Qi Jinkai was known to Lim Wei and Li Tingzi, but the 2 old women next to them had no time to pay attention at all. As a result, the competition between the 2 became increasingly fierce. I heard that you and Xiaju live together? It's not a good idea to be alone, right? We are engaged. We are engaged but not married yet, so we are so eager to live together. Qi Jinkai smiled, it's because of Mr. Li that we live together. Li Chen's breath was stuck in his throat. He was busy with other things these days and was not in his old house. When he came back, he only heard that Li Ju had moved out and lived with Qi Jinkai. He didn't agree with it at the time. Even though they are engaged, it's hard to say anything until they get married. What if Qi Jinkai suddenly becomes animalistic and bullies Xiaju one day? That's why he planned to take advantage of this opportunity to beat Qi Jinkai. Unexpectedly, the person who prompted Li Ju and Qi Jinkai to live together would be Mr. Li. Li Chen was so helpless that he wanted to cry without tears. It's not like all the good men in the world are dead, why does Mr. Li have to tie Li Ju to Qi Jinkai alone? Lim Wei listened to the conversation between Li Chen and Qi Jinkai and couldn't help but burst into laughter. He immediately covered his mouth, his face turned red from suppressing it, and he didn't forget to wink at Li Tingzi. Lim Wei, brother, did you see it? This is the first time I have seen my father suffer in a quarrel. Li Tingzi. Li Tingzi, don't glow too early. Lim Wei. As soon as he turned his head, he met Li Chen's eyes that were half smiling but not smiling. Though the look in his eyes was smiling, he felt a chill creeping up his back. Lim Wei immediately lowered his head and did not dare to act like a monster. His father's eyes were so lethal, and he was so stimulated by Qi Jinkai that he was about to go berserk. The undercurrent is raging over there and the smoke is filling the air, and Li Ju's side is not much better. Tisk, tisk, you came with my brother, right? When will we have a wedding with you? Li Ju said with a low smile. Ji Yuncha closed his eyes, his anger sank in his dantian, and told himself to endure it, and then uttered one word, get out. Whatever wedding wine you want to drink, she and Qi Jinkai should drink it first. Li Ju remained unyielding. He approached her and asked in a low voice, don't you have any feelings for my brother? Ji Yuncha paused, glanced at Li Tingzi, and said in a muffled voice, no. She still has some feelings. Li Ju was surprised and asked, then why haven't you two made it clear? Since they both have feelings for each other, why are they procrastinating? Wouldn't it be better to just have a he? Ji Yuncha glanced at her and said, I'm dealing with the Yun family's affairs recently, so I don't have time to fall in love right now. Li Ju clicked her tongue, how come the Yun family's problems are delaying your love affair? If it doesn't work, just cut the knot quickly and end it as soon as possible. You said it's light, come on. Ji Yuncha rolled her eyes. Before she had finished dealing with the Mo family's affairs, she came over to make sarcastic remarks. How do you feel about that? Just when Li Ju was about to say something, Mr. Li suddenly looked at them and asked, what are you muttering about? Nothing, Grandpa, I just asked DRG to go shopping. Mr. Li said, oh. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 278. Chapter 278, A Business with a Sure Profit and No Loss. First update. The solemn atmosphere between Li Chen and Qi Jinkai continued to the dinner table. The smell of gunpowder smoke filled the space between the two of them, which made Lim Wei next to him jump with fear. Hello, today is obviously my dad's birthday, but why am I celebrating it like it's his death anniversary? Looking at the dead air and their expressionless faces, he was almost overcome with embarrassment. Lim Wei was about to freeze to death from the cold air radiating from these two people, so he turned his head to look for rescue. However, when he turned around, he saw that everyone was busy and no one paid any attention to him. Ah shoo, the boiled fish cooked by Zhou Ma is the most authentic, try it. Li Tingzi used chopsticks to carefully remove the spines from the fish and placed it on Ji Yuncha's plate next to him. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, and the pink bubbles that came out at that moment almost drowned him. Lim Wei felt aggrieved and wanted to complain to his grandfather. In the end, Mr. Li didn't even give him a glance. Xiaju, eat more of your favorite sweet and sour short ribs. Mr. Li smiled and gave Li Ju a piece of ribs. Okay, thank you, Grandpa. Li Ju arched her eyebrows and thanked him with a smile. Lim Wei. So love really disappears. Lim Wei was so wrong that he exploded, but no one paid him any attention. He gritted his teeth in grief and anger and decided to save this embarrassing atmosphere by himself. Well, Dad, after all, Qi Jinkai is here to celebrate your birthday today. Your expressionless face is making people laugh, isn't it? Lim Wei approached Li Chen, nudged him lightly with his elbow, and whispered. Li Chen glanced at him, his expression still ugly, his usually gentle eyes filled with coldness. He hummed softly, celebrating your birthday? I think he is here to make me angry. Lim Wei twitched the corner of his mouth. Isn't that why you have always had an eye for other people's eyes and noses from the beginning? To be honest, he also felt that Li Chen's reaction was a bit excessive. Even if Qi Jinkai takes over their Xiaju and makes things difficult for her, the marriage will be arranged by the old man himself, so it won't be any worse. But Li Chen's reaction was almost the same as facing his son-in-law who stole his precious daughter. Dad, is your reaction too big? Although I am also unhappy that Xiaju was favored by him, he was chosen by Grandpa, so he is not much different. Hearing this, Li Chen frowned and lowered his eyes. He also understood what Lim Wei said. No matter in terms of character or family, there was no one better than Chi Jinkai. But after hearing that they were living together, his heart suddenly felt empty, as if he had lost everything. Something like that. When he saw Chi Jinkai, he remembered some things from the past, and a surge of anger surged into his heart for no reason, and he couldn't control it at all. Li Chen raised his head and looked at Chi Jinkai, who never took his eyes off Li Ju. He sighed helplessly and finally said, "Forget it, let him go first. If he dares to treat Xiaju badly, look at me how to teach him a lesson." Lim Wei breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. The atmosphere at the table finally became normal. Ji Yunchu looked at it, poked Li Tingzi with his finger, and asked in a low voice, "Why does Uncle Li dislike the third master so much?" Obviously he was only Li Ju's uncle, but his attitude towards Chi Jinkai was harsher than his son-in-law. Li Tingzi was picking fish bones for her. He raised his eyebrows when he heard this, revealing the dark history of Li Chen and Chi Jinkai. "Grandpa and Grandpa Chi are old comrades in arms. We used to be very close to each other, and Chi Jinkai was about the same age as me, so for a while, Grandpa Chi left him in the care of my dad." Ji Yunchu opened his eyes wide in surprise. His gaze moved back and forth between the two of them. He couldn't believe it at all. "Isn't it right? Mr. Chi, is it so exciting to play? Just leave your son in the care of others and just ignore him? Is this something a wealthy family does?" Li Tingzi smiled, leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "What's more, Chi Jinkai was full of trouble at that time, and he made my father a terrible mess. Since then, Li Chen has often told them to stay away from Chi Jinkai. Fire prevention, theft prevention, and Chi Jinkai. This person looks serious on the surface, but in fact he can buy you and make you count the money for him. When dealing with such people, you will definitely suffer losses." So after learning that he and Li Ju were engaged, he had a huge reaction. He was afraid that Li Ju would be deceived by Chi Jinkai, and the girl's family would be easily at a disadvantage. Ji Yunchu, who heard Li Chen's worry from Li Tingzi, was speechless. To be honest, based on her understanding of Li Ju, it's not certain who will suffer in a confrontation between her and Chi Jinkai. Judging from Chi Jinkai's current attitude towards Li Ju, it is obvious that he is the one who is being eaten to death. Ji Yunchu clicked her tongue twice with emotion, but did not say anything. Let them worry about their own affairs. "Hey, why did you mess with my uncle?" Li Ju glanced at Chi Jinkai and asked. The atmosphere between him and Li Chen has been different since just now. "What happened?" "It's okay, it's just that you and I live together, and your uncle seems unhappy." Li Ju was stunned and glanced at Li Chen dumbfounded. "That's it, what did I think?" Chi Jinkai raised the corners of his mouth slightly when he heard her words. "He is afraid that you will suffer a loss." "Li Ju, we're just living together, but we're not in the same room. Besides, even if we're in the same room, you'll still suffer the loss, okay?" Chi Jinkai was caught off guard and took a sip of water. "What makes him suffer?" Li Ju turned to look at him and asked doubtfully, "Isn't that right? With your worth, I can definitely make a profit if I sleep with you. It's a great deal." Chi Jinkai. Chi Jinkai narrowed his eyes flickered, and he glanced at Li Ju thoughtfully. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows slightly, raised the corners of his lips, and asked playfully, "Then do you want to try this business that is guaranteed to make money without losing money?" This time it was Li Ju who choked. A violent cough. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted. Mr. Li asked, "Xiaju, please eat slowly, you will choke." Chi Jinkai quickly patted her back gently to calm her down. The broad and warm palm patted back and forth on his back. Li Ju's body suddenly stiffened, and he felt that the place where he had patted him quickly heated up. Thinking again of his teasing words just now, Li Ju's expression immediately became unnatural. Why does she always feel that Chi Jinkai has changed a bit recently? He would never have said anything like letting himself sleep with him before. What went wrong? Is she broken or is Chi Jinkai broken? Noticing that her body was paused, Chi Jinkai patted her lips and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. After coughing for a while, Li Ju recovered and glanced at Chi Jinkai with a complicated expression. Chi Jinkai smiled and took back his hand. He didn't mention the topic just now. He just picked up a shrimp and peeled it slowly and carefully. Li Ju withdrew his gaze with lingering fear, lowered his head to eat quietly, pretending that what just happened did not exist. When she lowered her eyes and poked the rice with her chopsticks, a whole peeled shrimp fell into her bowl. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 279. Chapter 279 Climbing up to the Li family, second update. Li Ju was stunned and looked up at Chi Jinkai. He was holding a tissue at this time, elegantly wiping the oil stains on his slender fingers. You dash. Chi Jinkai glanced at her and smiled fondly. Don't you like shrimps but don't want to get your hands on them? I'll peel them for you. Wow. Ji Yunchu, who was opposite him, couldn't help but exclaimed in exclamation, his eyes full of interest in watching a show. Li Ju's mouth froze, and he raised his foot and kicked him over. Blocked by the table, Li Ju didn't care whether others could see her movements. Ji Yunchu was kicked, but Ji Yunchu acted as if nothing was wrong, with a smile on his lips and looking at the two of them with unusual eyes. The third master and Miss Li are really in love, I admire them. Li Tingzi on the side heard this and immediately asked, Ah Shu, do you want to eat shrimp? Can I peel it for you? Ji Yunchu. This time the person who said wow became Li Ju. Brother, you are really good to DRG, but you don't know when I will change my mind. Li Ju had a joking smile on his lips. Ji Yunchu's eyes twitched, and the foot under the table stepped on Li Ju's instep accurately. Li Ju's eyes suddenly narrowed, and a hint of danger flashed across his eyes. How dare you step on her? Immediately he raised his calf and hooked Ji Yunchu's foot, and kicked it again with the other foot. Ji Yunchu quickly defended. The two of them started fighting under the table. The fight in the dark was not noticed by others. Mr. Li still looked at his children and grandchildren with a smile on his face. Sure enough, when there are many people, it is lively. The old house has not been so lively for a long time. Just when Mr. Li was sighing with emotion, the fight between Ji Yunchu and Li Ju was still not over. When Li Tingzi saw that Ji Yunchu was silent, he thought she was acquiescing and was too embarrassed to speak out, so he took the initiative to pick up a shrimp and peel it. Chi Jinkai saw that Li Ju had finished eating the peeled shrimps, and started to peel them again. So these two pairs have surprisingly consistent painting styles. Li Mui sat aside and suddenly felt that his mouth had been stuffed and his face had been displayed. It's amazing how well you can show off. They are all amazing in pairs. You're bullying him for not having a girlfriend, right? He will find a girlfriend tomorrow. Female. Friend. Girlfriend. Let's see who shows off better then. Li Chen didn't have a very high sense of presence throughout the meal. Although he was the protagonist, he sat there quietly without saying anything. He kept his eyes on Chi Jinkai. When he saw him peeling shrimps for Li Ju carefully, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. After all, they are all here, how can you not see the obvious love in his eyes? The aloof Mr. Chi suddenly one day peels shrimps with his own hands for a woman. It seems that his thoughts about Xiaju are genuine. Ah Shu, try it, how does this shrimp taste? Li Tingzi put the shrimp into Ji Yunchu's bowl, but found that something was wrong with her expression. What's wrong with you? Ji Yunchu gritted his teeth and said, it's okay. Is Li Ju sending her away with this kick? He was kicked so hard that he was bruised even without looking. She took a deep breath and decided not to be like Li Ju, so she lowered her head and ate the shrimp. Yunchu, if you like to eat, come here often in the future, and I'll ask Mother Joe to cook it for you. Mr. Li saw that she had been busy eating, and thought she liked the food, so he invited her to come to the house often in order to make her more comfortable. Li Tingzi spent more time with her. After all, Li Tingzi's job is special, and it is difficult to get holidays. Even if it is Li Chen's birthday today, it coincides with his day off, otherwise he may be absent again this year. Mr. Li was thinking about how he could make Ji Yunshu move here directly. Okay, thank you Mr. Li. Ji Yunshu politely thanked him. At this moment, Joe's mother suddenly ran in with a panicked look and said to Mr. Li, "Old man, the second master is here with the second young lady and the Yun family." The lively atmosphere at the table immediately fell silent. When Ji Yunshu heard the words from the Yun family, he exerted force on his hands and almost broke his chopsticks. Mr. Li frowned. Who asked him to come? He did not invite them. Joe's mother hesitated and said, "They came here on their own." The second master said that after all, he can be regarded as the uncle's younger brother. It can't be justified if he doesn't. Li Chen's face was gloomy, with a storm brewing in his eyes. He slapped his chopsticks on the table, stood up and said angrily, "I don't have a brother like him, so let him get out of here." The word go was so powerful that it shocked everyone. Even Joe's mother was stunned to the spot. In their eyes, Li Chen has always been gentle and modest. He has never been so angry, let alone said hello to others. A flash of surprise flashed across Li Ju's eyes. Although Li Chen usually hated Li Hong, he was nowhere near as angry as he was today when he was mentioned. There must be a story between the two of them. "Brother, don't say that, I'm very sad." "Arrive before anyone arrives?" Li Chen stared at the entrance. Li Hong came in with Li Yun, followed by the Yun family and his wife. Ji Yunshu's face turned dark immediately when he saw the two people behind Li Hong. Without paying attention, the chopsticks in his hand broke with a crash. "Ah Shu, what's wrong?" Li Tingzi asked with concern when he saw Ji Yunshu's expression was wrong. Ji Yunshu squinted his eyes, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "It's nothing, I just saw two annoying people." Hearing this, Li Tingzi raised his head and glanced at the uninvited people, and said in a cold voice, "You guys came uninvited, it seems a bit rude, right?" Li Hong frowned and said displeasedly, "Tingzi, what are you talking about? I'm your second uncle, why did you come here uninvited?" Li Tingzi snorted coldly, "Second uncle, it's okay for you to come. Why are you bringing outsiders here? We are eating now and don't see any guests." His words both inside and outside mean to drive people away. The faces of the Yun family couple who were following Li Hong immediately turned ugly. Originally, they wanted to visit Mr. Li, but unexpectedly they met Ji Yunshu, this girl here. And from the looks of it, she is very familiar with the Li family and can even eat at the same table with them. They never knew how this girl got the ability to climb the big tree of the Li family. No wonder he was so confident when facing them. It turns out it's because there's someone behind you. Yun Ying glared at Ji Yunshu with a dark face, and the bag in her hand was almost crushed by her. Damn it! This dead girl has climbed into the Li family. Wouldn't it be a lot more troublesome to do anything to her in the future? Ah! She really didn't expect that Ji Yunshu had so many tricks. It wasn't enough for him to be a member of the Lu family. Now even the Li family came to support her. She really underestimated her. Ji Yunshu looked at Yun Yin's livid face, but his expression didn't change much. Based on what she knew about this person, she must be extremely angry right now. Tisk. It's nice to think about it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 280. Chapter 280 Like going crazy, first update. Yun Yin's lungs are really about to explode now. If Ji Yunshu climbs into the Li family, it means that her next plans will be affected. Damn it, this dead girl is indeed as disgusting as her parents. Tingzi, today is your dad's birthday. As his younger brother, don't I even have the right to see him? Li Hong's expression was angry and sad, and his eyes were fixed on Li Tingzi, as if he was making a silent accusation. Younger brother. Li Chen's warm eyes were filled with chill, and he said coldly, I don't have a brother like you. His tone was as if it had been tempered by ice. His eyes were sharp and piercing towards Li Hong. There was an anger in his eyes that he had never seen before. He clenched his hands hanging by his sides into fists, and squeezed out a sentence between his teeth through gritted teeth, take your people with you immediately, and get out of here. The last few words were bitten so hard that Li Hong froze on the spot and couldn't recover for a long time. He subconsciously blurted out, brother. Roll. Li Yun frowned, seeming a little dissatisfied with Li Chen's attitude, and tried to speak for Li Hong, uncle, dad is also kind dash. Shut up. Before she finished speaking, she was sharply interrupted by Li Chen. I'm talking to your dad, how can you interrupt? Your upbringing has gone to the dog's belly. His words were extremely cold. Li Yun, who had never been spoken to by an elder in such a harsh way, immediately turned pale. His face was filled with tears, and tears quickly gathered in the corners of his eyes, making him feel pitiful. Li Chen glanced at her and snorted, take that thing back, no one here wants to see it. Li Yun's expression instantly stiffened, and the color on his face quickly faded. Li Ju, who was watching the play on the sidelines, clicked his tongue twice and sighed in his heart. Sure enough, the 9 sons of Longsheng are all different. Although Li Chen and Li Hong are brothers, their personalities are completely different. The expression of pity on Li Yun's face just now was probably a bit intolerable for a man, but Li Chen didn't seem to notice it. Seeing that his daughter was being scolded, Li Hong took a step forward and stood in front of her. He sighed, brother, don't get angry at Yun'er. If you have anything to do with me, come at me. Coming for you. Li Chen's eyes were somewhat sarcastic. Are you worthy? If Dad hadn't been here today, if there hadn't been outsiders present, Li Hong, do you think you could have walked out intact? Li Chen seemed to move his wrist inadvertently, but when Li Hong saw it, his expression changed drastically. This action undoubtedly reminded him of some unpleasant memory. Even though Li Yun was blocked behind him, he could still clearly see his slightly shaking shoulders. Li Hong, sometimes I wonder if we are related by blood, and why are you so stupid? I can't come at any time, so why don't you choose today? Do you want me to help you recall the past? Li Hong's expression changed, and he was almost uncontrollable. Li Chen narrowed his eyes when he saw this, and took a step forward, his aura became more threatening, and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. Today is my birthday, and it's also Awen's birthday. Why do you ignore the warnings and provoke me today? Li Chen shouted the last few words as if he had exhausted all his strength. There was a moment of silence in the atmosphere. Li Ju frowned, looking at the scene with confusion, and fell into deep thought. Why did the usually gentle Li Chen suddenly become so cold and stern when he saw Li Hong again? And what does he mean by what he said? What does "it's just today" mean? Li Ju subconsciously turned her head to look at Mr. Li, only to find that he had closed his eyes with a helpless expression, but she could see the vicissitudes of life and sadness from him. What happened? Why did the atmosphere suddenly become very subtle? Just when Li Chen said the last words, everyone in the Li family, even Zhou's mother who was standing there, looked like something was wrong. Li Ju was a little surprised by the scene in front of her. After all, she had never seen the Li family look so wrong in the 2 years since she came to the imperial capital. It seemed as if they were enveloped by something and couldn't get away. However, although she was curious, she also knew that this was the privacy of the Li family. If it was not necessary, she would not pry. Li Hong straightened his back, and a drop of cold sweat slid down his forehead. He was stared at by Li Chen's cold gaze, which made him feel unnatural. He subconsciously wanted to retreat, but then he thought of the purpose of coming here today, gritted his teeth and held back his heart. Trembling. "Brother, it's been a long time since the past happened, please forgive me." Li Hong's plan was very simple. Before he came, he knew that coming to see Li Chen today might not be a good decision. After all, they both knew what day it was. But as long as he gave in, depending on Li Chen's good old temperament, maybe I won't break up with him. However, he miscalculated. "Forgive you, daydreaming." Li Chen walked up to him step by step and stood in front of him. Due to his years of physical exercise, his back was extra straight, without the listlessness of a middle-aged man, which made him even more imposing than Li Hong. Li Hong felt his collar was suddenly picked up, and then he hit the wall out of control. No one expected that Li Chen would do this. Li Yun screamed instantly and wanted to step forward to stop him, but was slapped away by Li Chen. The Yun family and his wife behind her also seemed to be frightened by the scene and froze in place. "Dad! Dad!" Two voices sounded at the same time. Li Tingzi and Lim Wei stepped forward to stop them, but Li Chen's eyes froze them in place. "You don't need to worry about it, I have my own discretion." The meaning in his eyes was very clear. The two looked at each other, retracted their outstretched hands, and stood motionless. After stopping his two sons, Li Chen turned around with a ruthless look in his eyes, and put his arm on Li Hong's throat, making him feel suffocated. "Li Hong, let me tell you, the person in the world who is least qualified to ask for my forgiveness is you. So, you'd better not keep showing off in front of me with a shy face over and over again, that will only make me more disgusted." Li Hong was choked by him and couldn't make a sound. He could only blush and open and close his mouth, making intermittent syllables. He looked directly at Li Chen. Since the distance was very close, he could easily see the panic written in it. Li Chen sneered coldly and couldn't help but exert more force on his hands. "Ah, what are you doing? Stop it, you are murdering, murdering." Li Yun saw that Li Hong was almost out of breath and screamed in panic, but he did not have the courage to go up and stop Li Chen. She looked at the man who was pressing her father against the wall, her eyes full of fear and disbelief. She never thought that this uncle, who always looked gentle and kind, would actually do such a thing. Like, crazy. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 281. Chapter 281 Mr. Li, put away your little thoughts, second update. However, Li Chen seemed to be really in a daze and couldn't hear her scream at all. He just stared at the face of Li Hong, who was very close at hand. That look in his eyes could only be clearly seen by Li Hong, who was facing him. It was anger, regret, and heart-stopping madness. Li Tingzi watched from the side as Li Chen's movements became more and more severe, and couldn't help but remind him, "Dad, please relax a little first, he can't breathe anymore." However, Li Chen did not react. Li Ju's eyes flashed and his brows furrowed. Something was wrong. There was something wrong with Li Chen's current state. "Ah Shen, stop." The old voice was full of shock. Mr. Li, who had been silent all this time, also spoke. Apparently he also realized something was wrong. But it's still useless. Li Ju felt that for a moment, Li Chen might really want to kill Li Hong. But not now. Li Ju's eyes narrowed, and he walked up to him unexpectedly, reaching out and grabbing his wrist. The woman's slender white hand was placed on his wrist. The brief contact made Li Chen suddenly startled and he immediately came back to his senses. Turning her head to meet Li Ju's clear eyes, she said, "Uncle, let go." Just 4 words, but Li Chen seemed to be hit hard somewhere in his heart. He subconsciously listened to her words and let go of Li Hong. The huge body that had lost its restraint slid to the ground along the wall and almost broke away. Li Hong took a deep breath desperately like a dehydrated fish returning to the sea. Li Yun rushed over to help him up, crying, "Dad, are you okay?" Li Hong was speechless. His eyes were wide open and he looked straight at Li Chen, his face pale with fright. Li Chen was dragged aside by Li Ju and stood there without saying anything. The air became quiet again. In the end, Mr. Li sighed heavily, "What is this all about?" He stood up tremblingly on crutches. Ji Yunchu and Qi Jinkai, who were closest to him, quickly stepped forward to support him, but he waved his hands to express no need. Mr. Li walked around the dining table and walked between the two of them. He did not criticize anyone, but said in a serious tone, "You two should calm down for a while. You are so old that you are still attacking? It's outrageous." Neither of them made a sound, and they didn't know whether they heard it or not. After beating up his two sons, Mr. Li finally set his sights on the Yun couple who had a particularly low sense of presence after entering the house. "Do you two have anything else to do?" Yun Yin and Chu Huiguang were a little at a loss. They followed Li Hong to the door. They just wanted to ask the Li family for something, but they didn't expect to encounter such a big drama. They didn't know what to say. We have something to ask you for help." Yun Yin bit her lip and finally stated their purpose. Mr. Li sighed, "I see, it's just that we didn't entertain you well, and we made you laugh." Yun Yin, who has followed Mr. Yun to various scenes since she was a child and has witnessed many disputes among wealthy families, heard the hidden meaning in Mr. Li's words and said quickly, "No, no, no. Don't worry, we didn't see anything. Even if you see it, treat it as if you haven't seen it. The Li family is one of the two top wealthy families in the imperial capital. If today's scandal is leaked at all, I'm afraid the Yun family will not get any good results. Although Yun Yin is sometimes very extreme and like a madman, she can still recognize reality at critical moments." Mr. Li nodded, as if he was very satisfied with their answers. "Please wait a little longer, I need to take care of some housework. Judging from the current situation, I am afraid that the Yun family will have to say yes." Mr. Li turned around and shouted angrily with a stern face, "You two! Come to the study on the second floor." As he said that, he went up the stairs. "Also, Makino, Tingzi, Xiaju, you guys can come too." Finally, Mr. Li called Li Ju's name, and she raised her eyebrows slightly. This matter had nothing to do with her from beginning to end, so why did she need to be brought along? But Mr. Li said so, so she couldn't refuse. She could only give Qi Jinkai a look and follow him up to the second floor. Qi Jinkai knew that Mr. Li would not be short-lived in dealing with this matter, so he turned to Zhou's mother and said, "Is there any tea at home?" Zhou's mother's expression is still a little dazed. "What? Please make some cups of tea. It is estimated that they will have to wait for a long time while drinking tea." Zhou's mother, "Oh." The study room on the second floor. Li Chen and Li Hong stood on both sides respectively. Mr. Li sat on the swivel chair behind the desk with a cold expression. Li Yun supported Li Hong, with tears welling up in his eyes. He pitifully complained first, "Grandpa, do you think what uncle has done to Dad?" As she spoke, she turned Li Hong's body sideways, revealing the wrinkled collar where Li Chen had just removed a button, as well as the red mark under his neck where it had been strangled. Mr. Li glanced at him and remained silent. After a long time, he closed his eyes and asked, "Hong, what are you doing here today?" Li Hong, who had not made a sound since just now, suddenly widened his eyes in disbelief and looked at Mr. Li in shock. He was unfazed by his injuries, and the first thing he said was asking himself the purpose of coming today. This all proved that he was protecting Li Chen. Li Hong's face darkened, and his chest suddenly rose and fell violently, as if he was angry at Mr. Li's unfairness. "Dad, shouldn't I ask my eldest brother why he attacked me first?" Mr. Li raised his eyes and glanced at him coldly. You don't know why he did it? Li Hong said nothing. I know what you are thinking. If you want me to be fair, you should put away those little thoughts first, Mr. Li snorted coldly. Li Hong is his biological son, and no one knows him better than him. Li Hong was told what he was thinking, and he looked a little worried for a moment. Dad, I'm really here to celebrate my eldest brother's birthday, but he doesn't want to see me, so why bother? Li Hong gritted his teeth and said. Celebrating his birthday? Your coming to celebrate his birthday will only make him more angry, Mr. Li said. I remember I said that you are not allowed to appear in front of Ah Chen on his birthday. You will do it yourself today. Li Hong clenched his fist angrily, feeling very unsatisfied. Why, since they are both his biological sons, he has always been partial to Li Chen. On Li Chen's birthday, he would tell himself not to get in front of him and instead hold a small birthday party for him. When it was his birthday, he didn't even ask. Even if he invited him to his birthday party, he would decline with excuses. Why? The anger in Li Hong's eyes almost overflowed. They are both sons, why is there such a big gap? End of this chapter.